Hello everyone, this is Brian Hyrek of VoIP Supply, and thank you for taking time out of your busy days and busy schedules to join us to do a joint webinar here with VoIP Supply, SYSTM, and of course Sangoma. Today we're going to be speaking about virtualizing your SBC with SYSTM and Sangoma. Today I have some awesome co-hosts with me. We have Mike White and Scott Beer of Sangoma, and I do have Michael Donnell of SYSTM as well. Those of you who do not know, VoIP Supply has been operating since 2002. We do have over 125,000 active customers that we currently support. And there are some benefits to being a partner with VoIP Supply as well. We do have a DaaS program, Device as a Service, which gives you access to, of course, a rental program that would enable you to wrap everything into an operational expense for your clients versus CapEx. We do provisioning for over 60 manufacturers, that being Sangoma. Your Sangoma phones can be provisioned, labeled, and shipped blindly to your customers to be plug and play, or as plug and play as possible. With that, we do have a marketplace where we offer SIP trunking and, of course, hosted VoIP solutions such as Digium Switchvox in the cloud, Sangoma PBExact, and SIPStation. We can have a one-on-one conversation about what your payouts would be, so you can start building up your MRR and stacking that against hardware discounts through VoIP Supply as well. Provisioning and fulfillment, you will have access to a portal that there is an API for as well that you can do integrations with for your ordering system. You can get real-time access, MAC IDs within 4 minutes of your order, and you can see the provisioning process in real time. VoIP Supply also offers a refresh and reclaim program, which is really cool. So maybe you walked into a site where 3CX is up and the client doesn't want it any longer, and they have some old Yealink phones that you want to get out of there, but they kind of want to recoup some costs for that gear. Well, VoIP Supply can help. We can offer you cash or even store credit towards your order for that old SIP hardware. And on the flip, we do have some reclaimed phones that go through a 10-step process that you can purchase at an additional discount. So with that, I would like to introduce and pass the torch over to Mike White, my colleague at Sangoma. And Mike, you want to take it away and tell us a bit about Sangoma?
Sure thing. Hello, and thanks for joining us. As Brian said, my name is Michael White. I am the Vice President of Open Source Sales here at Sangoma. For those of you who don't know, Sangoma is a leading unified communications provider based in Toronto, Canada. Sangoma was built on the core principle that extraordinary customer service shouldn't be extraordinary, and our executive team has handcrafted a dynamic organization that makes customer service our #1 priority. Founded over 35 years ago, Sangoma has grown from our humble beginnings to a TSX publicly traded company. Our proven track record has given us the ability to grow to over 15 locations worldwide, and this, of course, is to better serve our community of customers and reseller partners such as yourself. As the corporate sponsor and trademark holder of 2 of the largest open source telephony projects on the planet, Asterisk and FreePBX, it is our corporate responsibility to build and develop innovative products to better meet the needs of partners such as yourself. At the foundation of everything that we do here lives Asterisk and FreePBX. We've built a comprehensive product stack and have become a one-stop shop for all things UC and VoIP. These products include, but of course aren't limited to, session border controllers, which Mr. Beer will talk to you about today. We also have a complete line of network interface devices such as our A-series telephony boards and Vega gateways. We have Appy Days, which is our communication platform as a service. We have 2 complete lines of desktop telephones. We also have a comprehensive group of desktop and mobile apps. And we've recently launched a new line of headsets in our H10 and H2O. Sangoma has both wholesale and retail SIP trunking products with VoIP Innovations and SIPStation. And currently we offer 2 turnkey UC platforms with SwitchVox and PBExact, both of which are offered within Systems platform. Our most recent meeting as a service offering is Sangoma Meet. If you're not familiar with it, please check it out at meet.sangoma.com. Without further ado, I will pass the baton to Mike O'Donnell with System. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks, Mike. This is Mike O'Donnell, everyone. Thank you again for joining. I'm calling in on audio here, so I'm here just to touch on System just real briefly. So System is really a hosting company. It's outsourcing the data center piece and making it easier for whether you're a direct customer or a partner to host your voice applications. We're really infrastructure as a service. So think about the Microsoft Azures of the world. What we're really trying to do is provide all the things like hardware, software, network, etc., and really make it easy, regardless of the Sangoma product that you end up consuming, to host that so you could focus on your customer. So for us, it's about making it simple, providing flexibility and scale, and really, putting you in a position where you could focus on your customer and not the infrastructure. So I look forward to hopefully, working with Sangoma and you and VoIP Supply to focus on the SBC. So with that, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's get into the details of the SBC.
All right, thanks very much, Mike. My name is Scott Beer. I am the Director of Solutions Engineering here at Sangoma. I lead the pre-sales team as well as the Sangoma University, which is our certification training department. Today I'm going to talk to you about some of the details, a little bit technical, a little bit use case, about our session border controller and how it can improve your security and VoIP environment along with the system infrastructure. So first, let's talk about, even I say hosted SwitchVox today, but let's just talk, this could be, of course, any PBX out there, PBExact, free PBX, SwitchVox. So what we try to do in here is that, of course, firewalls are ubiquitous in today's environments. They are everywhere, whether you see them or not, and they provide you a level of security, an edge device that will block a lot of malicious traffic, and so it's always kind of good to, every product, of course, out there, the SwitchVox, the free PBX and PBExact products all come with built-in firewall settings, and that's a definite advantage and important for any sort of PBX deployment. But also too, if there are other data, but of course these firewalls are not, they are great, but they're not as good as a purpose-built firewall like Cisco ASA or other firewalls like that are industry leaders in their security environment. So we want to make sure that you are deploying your environment with, to ensure that you can deliver the security policies that you need. So we have, you have firewall settings that you'll have to take note of, like port forwarding, any of the VoIP ports and things like that, like signaling port of SIP protocol, RTP ports, and maybe there are other services, advanced services out there like web ports for APIs and other ports like that. And then, of course, using the firewall where the firewall is best to block all of the other malicious traffic that is out there. And then, of course, the SwitchVox and other PBX settings will have their own access control rules and their own firewall, features and functionality. And of course, you're only as good as your password. So you want to make sure your extension registration passwords and your voicemail passwords are very strong so that no one can hack you in that way. And then, of course, we restrict, the administration GUI because we don't want everybody logging into your PBX and trying to hack into the administration so that they can just read your password or change your password or make new configurations that you're not aware of. And of course, why are there SBCs out there, right? Why an SBC? Well, we have to ensure that security and protection of your voice over IP environment is not trivial. It's not something you should overlook. Too many times as a pre-sales engineer, you get into a situation where, the customer is talking about security at the very end of the conversation, when really it should be at the very start of the conversation. So you want to make sure that they are obviously deploying a firewall somewhere in their network. Why are they not thinking about VoIP security and protection of their voice over IP environment? So here's why the SBC is part of this conversation. We hackers, right, only need one exposed area to take down a major service in your environment. So in this major service, we have to deem voice over IP as a mission critical application, and so we have to put those security policies around protecting our voice over IP services. Malicious, so basically as voice over IP grows across the internet and other and applications, of course, with work from home being very prevalent these days, we have more opportunities, more voice over IP traffic occurring over the internet, because the internet is the single easiest place for communication across multiple networks, right, and multiple home networks. So here we have a great opportunity for malicious activity to look at the traffic and try to exploit any sort of exploit businesses that are weak in deploying their voice over IP security. So and also, of course, as legacy phone systems transition into VoIP environments, right, we also have this kind of gap of knowledge in going from a PSTN or an old TDM sort of interface where security was only point of presence, or had to go to the tip and ring in order to tap the call, versus over the internet where they're now globally global security threats that you need to understand. So again, firewalls are ubiquitous, right? So in network topologies, so now we have to think to ourselves, okay, why are we not thinking about deploying voice over IP policies in the same sort of way? So we have to put a stop to any sort of malicious activity specifically directed towards voice over IP. So SBCs, right, is with like any security policy, right? The more layers you put in, right, the better you get. That's why even the PBXs, they have built-in security policies. They have firewalls. They have some tools that will provide you, but the more layers that you put in, the better security you have. So it becomes more and more difficult for any sort of malicious activity to go and compromise your system. If they're attacking your PBX directly, it's one step easier for them to compromise your environment. So putting an SBC in before your mission critical, PBX allows you an additional additional layer of security. So that any sort of malicious activity has roadblocks, multiple roadblocks that the attacker has to compromise, and of course, if it gets too hard for them, they just move on to the next vulnerable business. We need to have and maintain, right, your protection methods. We need to have policies in place, right, to routinely check and monitor the activity, to be up to date with current security threats, specifically towards voice over IP, to understand what type of attacks are there out there and have a rule around it. Or when I say a rule, I say also a policy or something to that effect. So, here we'll show you kind of how to create that sort of layered protection, right? And using the Sangoma SBC, right, to have a rock solid security policy for implementing voice over IP. And I always say, and it's a common question that comes up, well, why not just my firewall? And it'll come up a few times in here. And I always say that SBCs complement your existing security infrastructure by adding, right, voice over IP security policies to your firewall and its data security policies. Okay, so we're trying to add in additional features and functionality where in products such as firewall it may be lacking. So we have to first understand types of attacks. What are we trying to protect ourselves against for, in the first place? So it's a good understanding. And here's just some common ones. Not all of them. There's plenty more. But I just want to kind of give you an idea of some common types of attacks that we're trying to prevent, right? The most common one, toll fraud, right? We're trying to prevent somebody from hairpinning calls through our system to take advantage and make free phone calls using our resources, right? And that can occur many different ways, but it's always kind of going through our IPPBX to the providers that we have connected, whether it's, a SIP trunk or a PSTN trunk through the PBX, or maybe they're trying to spoof your services to the carrier. There's also identity theft, right, where they're trying to mask your service, or they're trying to mask a phone or a resource of yours and then gain entry that way. Denial of service, right? They're just simply throwing you a lot of traffic in order to deny any sort of legitimate traffic. And of course, eavesdropping, which is simply kind of a type of man-in-the-middle type of attack, which just simply records and monitors, VoIP calls and can listen into conversations and things like that. Again, these are just 4 of many types of attacks that are out there. So again, a common question comes up, firewalls. Well, I have a firewall. Is that not, is that not good enough? And I'm going to say that firewalls are not enough. Yeah, and we have to understand a little bit lower layer, a little bit deeper here of, how firewalls are built. Firewalls were really never designed for voice over IP traffic. Voice over IP is an application. Firewalls are more kind of networking kind of tools, or network layer type of tools, trying to provide NAT and deep packet inspection and things like that. But and of course, as firewalls their inherent function, it's like they're built in, is to deny all unsolicited traffic. Okay, so me, just by virtue of picking up my phone and calling one of the mics on the call here is an unsolicited event. So it's not like they call me before I have to call them. I'm just simply calling them first, and that's an unsolicited event. And so a firewall, by its very nature, is going to deny that traffic. Also, too, firewalls, they don't understand the SIP protocol. This is an application layer protocol, not a networking layer protocol. It's not like UDP or TCP or routing, or NAT. This is an application, and firewalls don't do very well at routing applications. Of course, audio in voice over IP, specifically SIP protocol, audio negotiations, the media negotiation is separate from the signaling. So you have streams of audio, which is different than the streams of signaling. So of course, again, firewalls are not going to look at that. And also too, firewalls are not designed to have real-time communication. I mean, you may or may not know, but if you have a very high-level firewall that has unified threat management, as it's monitoring maybe emails going through the bot, through its network, it may take several seconds to reach out to a database. Is this spam? Is this not spam? You don't see that your email landed 5 seconds later than what it did, than when it was sent. But I can tell you for sure, in a voice call, if you're waiting 7 seconds, 10 seconds, you're already going, what is wrong with my phone call? and experiencing a problem. So some firewalls, they have these little SIP ALG, application layer gateway, right? So will a SIP ALG work? No, not really. You'll find that although they do understand SIP, they don't always necessarily get the audio ports correct, and they don't understand how to manipulate SIP or apply security to SIP. So how, to watch the URIs going back and forth, watch the media, be stateful about, what's going on within that phone call, right? So how do you work around firewalls, right? We always say, okay, well, I got a firewall. How do I make voice over IP work? And I kind of brushed on it earlier. Well, you port forward 5060 and you port forward your media ports and things like that. And well, when you start doing some port forwarding, you're really just talking about poking holes in your firewall on specific applications and specific, services, certain applications. And so, and this is how systems get hacked, right? When you start poking holes in your firewall, malicious parties start to attack those ports, knowing that they're getting through and attacking your services on the other side. So when you use simply just a firewall, this means that you're basically moving the responsibility of the security policy downstream. So now the PBX, the switch box, now must deal with voice over IP security threats, denial of service attacks, toll fraud, things like that. So we have to, of course, also requires you to have some understanding of the firewall and knowledge of its configuration and port forwarding, ACLs, and things like that, which not everybody is, has knowledge in how to best configure their firewall. And of course, poking holes in your firewalls, right, is just an easy way for allowing malicious activity to go from an untrusted network, such as an internet, to a trusted environment, such as your private network, which is always a security no-no. So SBC is the solution here, right? So SBC, right, provides you that real-time security. Unfortunately, that SBCs are still not very well understood, right, and still require a lot of knowledge and understanding of how they are applied in your network. If you create it, but I always use for the same reason why we buy a firewall to provide security policies. We may not understand all of what it's trying to provide, but we buy the firewall because we know it's necessary to protect our data network. Well, we should be thinking the same thing for an SBC, to purchase an SBC to protect our voice over IP communications. So we place the SBC right at the edge of the network typically, or at least within the call flow path, right, within the call flow path, to provide security policies of our VoIP communications. We can then allow the SBC, based on the type of traffic it sees, will intelligently make those decisions, right, to allow the call, to block the call, reroute the call, maybe fork the call to multiple systems, and provide a whole bunch of intelligence around what do you want to do with all of these type of voice over IP communications. So how does the SBC do this? Primarily, well, it has what we call a back-to-back user agent built into the SBC, where as that Ethernet cable comes in, there's firewall around the networking around that, but then we can split off the SIP signaling, the voice over IP signaling, run it through a number of intelligence, right, SIP normalization and security and transcoding and CDR and call admission control and other management tools and DSP resources and a whole bunch of other intelligence, that flexible control and reporting of that traffic, and then finally negotiate the media, and then finally send it off to the other side. So essentially it separates any individual call into two call halves and apply that intelligence in the middle to ensure that, hey, this is the only type of SIP packet that I want to get through, and it gets through, and I'm going to send it to where I want to send it, not where somebody might be asking to send it. Some of the features of the SBC, right, primarily is security, right, to protect from denial of service attacks and fuzzing attacks and toll frauds and reconnaissance attacks and all the other types of security threats that are out there specifically targeted to voice over IP. It provides access control lists, both static and dynamic, and dynamic's really kind of cool ACL. We'll get into a little bit later. SIP protocol filtering and rate limiting, so I can look at just how many SIP methods. I get right down to the nitty gritty and see how many types of this SIP packet versus that SIP packet are allowed in any given period of time. And then of course IDS, IPS, so that's intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems, right, that are looking at known malicious activity that can be, we just say, hey, that packet is a SIP vicious packet. All right, just turf it because it's already a known security threat. And of course, the ultimate in security is encryption, right? If I can encrypt all the media and signaling going through the box, then I can prevent things like eavesdropping and authentication problems and that may occur at certain endpoints. Various registration policies, right? Preventing unregistered endpoints from just simply making phone calls or access to your VoIP service, or likes to say that you have to authenticate first before I'm going to let you make a phone call. So I can provide that sort of let certain packets through for authentication and not let other parts of the VoIP communication through. So we're going very nitty gritty in there as to allowing certain parts of a VoIP communication. And of course, every SBC out there is very good at call routing. I mean, it's a call routing engine. You know, calls come in, calls go out. And so how you provide dial plans and call flows and, you know, least cost routing and load balancing and survivable routing, you know, like, which I mean to say primary and secondary and tertiary, you know, locations, you know, and provide that, you know, even if system A is down, no problem, the call doesn't have to die. Let's go send it somewhere else, you know, and so it has that ability to keep the call working and try to find a path to make sure that call gets answered somewhere. And of course, SIP conversion, right? Interoperability kind of capabilities, right? Not all SIP is the same. Some carriers have certain requirements, other carriers have different requirements. Some PBXs have certain things and other PBXs have other things. They all want to do it a little differently. That's no problem for an SBC because it's built on the idea that I can tear down any sort of SIP message and build it back up again on the other side. And as I said earlier, with that back-to-back user agent, you know, separates one call into two call halves and puts intelligence in the middle. So one side doesn't necessarily know what the other side is doing in that respect. Transcoding is another great feature of SBC because you know, carriers like their carrier codecs, their carrier media streams, where, you know, I'm getting very familiar with HD voice quality and we're loving it to death. So, you know, and a lot of carriers have yet to support that. So here's a great tool to allow me to transcode from one level of media stream to another. And of course, with our SBC, it's very scalable. You know, if I start my business off with 25 calls, then I grow it to 100 current calls. It's not a problem. A simple little change and away I go. So we're going to talk a little bit, some of the use cases. I'm going to focus a little bit on the two top use cases, but the SBC has plenty of use cases. Remote workers, SIP trunking, SBC to TDM support, virtualizing SBCs, transcoding, security, high availability, interoperability are some of the most common use cases. In this conversation, I can spend all day talking about all of these, but I'm just going to focus on the first two, remote workers and SIP trunking. So in the remote worker, right, very popular. I mean, especially these days, everybody's working from home. Okay, so we want to make sure that when we have soft phones and hard phones and in offices of employees, we want to make sure that these are secure communications between the phone and the PBX. We want to ensure that the communication to the phone is secure. We also want to make sure that the PBX is secure and all that good stuff. So the SBC, it's important to note just for that the SBC supports DPMA, which is just simply a provisioning protocol for Digium phones to allow, and because they provision their phones over using SIP protocol. And so we want to make sure we allow those authorized endpoints to get their configuration and eliminating sort of interoperability issues and firewall issues. With the use of the SBC, right, there's no VPN requirement. You don't have to use IPsec or things like that. We can use the native SIP and use the tools around it to ensure that you're providing secure communications, allowing those SIP registrations through providing remote firewall NAT traversal, providing call admission control, topology hiding, and of course, encryption with TLS and SRTP protocol. And this, of course, features that are very useful in remote phones. So as an example, is if you were to deploy remote worker without and with an SBC, okay, in a firewall without an SBC, you typically put a firewall in front, right, port forward, your SIP ports and applications and RTP and things like that to get that through. But again, this removes the responsibility to the IPP, the security to the IPPBX, right? You're simply allowing that traffic through. With an SBC, right, the SBC gets in the middle of the call path, right, where phones and registrations and calls now have to go through the SBC, where now you can apply all of those security rules, you know, call admission control and access and registrations and dynamic ACL and other, to allow that layer of control in between the two boxes, so that if there is, let's say, a denial of service attack, your PBX is not dealing with a denial of service attack, it's the SBC. So your PBX can sit there and function correctly and make calls and do all the things while the SBC is taking the brunt of the activity, the malicious activity. Okay, so how this kind of works, especially with the use of systems, cloud infrastructure, right, where the PBX sits, connected to the internet, and the SBC will be sitting there in their infrastructure, right? The SBC can provide, SIP VoIP security, provide the VoIP IDS IPS, provide the dynamic ACLs and far-end NAT traversal. It has a built-in SIP IP firewall or data firewall. It has a built-in SIP firewall, call admission control and rate limiting and flexible dial plan. While the PBX, the Sangoma PBX, of course, can have the phones work through, have the phones can send their API ports directly to the PBX, desktop, soft phone, things like that, switchboard. And in the web user interface, whether it's the user web interface on Switchvox or UCP on PBExact, can be sent directly to the PBX. And essentially, so they just simply, in this respect, the SBC is front-ending a lot of the voice over IP communications, applying those security policies for voice over IP before it goes to the Switchvox environment. Just for configuration, as a configuration example, remote worker, right? For Switchvox, you would use the outbound proxy setting for the remote phone and send it to the SBC. In this case, an outbound proxy is to say, outbound proxy setting simply says, well, my SIP server is over here, but an outbound proxy says, go here first. So send it here, but I'm going over there. So that's what an outbound proxy is. So in this case, the outbound proxy is the SBC because I'm trying to register to the Switchvox through or via the SBC, right? So that ensures that all the remote communications, all the remote phones will communicate with the SBC as they are targeted towards the Switchvox or IPPBX. And then, of course, just simply going into the admin GUI, allowing the certain phone networks so it knows the difference between inside phones and outside phones and where phones are located. And, of course, you can also verify that those phones are connected to the Switchvox by looking at certain connection status on the Switchvox. On the SBC, I could spend a long time trying to go over the configuration, but essentially, to kind of bring it into a nutshell, is essentially you're creating an internal profile and an external profile. So a trusted zone and an untrusted zone, because you're going to apply different security policies in different areas. So you're going to create two different profiles, one on the inside, one on the outside. And then you're going to associate certain call routings to shape that call flow. So calls from an untrusted zone are going to be routed to destinations on the trusted zone, and vice versa, where calls are going the other way. And then, of course, you're going to apply various different ACLs, both static ACLs and dynamic ACLs, and various SIP security policies and IDS IPS on these through that SBC configuration. The next application, actually use case that's common for SBCs, is SIP trunking, right? So SIP trunking is a great place to reduce your costs, right? I mean, rent a T1 these days, still about $600 a month, so that's just renting one. So, SIP trunking is definitely a very cost-effective way to reduce your toll charges in your PSTN environment. So, SBC provides a great demarcation point between two peers to apply different policies. So, so should you trust your carrier implicitly? I wouldn't, because they're just as problematic as anybody else. So I want to make sure that I am applying certain policies around them, making sure that I'm solving any sort of interoperability issues. And of course, if I'm very satisfied with my HD voice, but my carrier doesn't like it, then I have an ability to transcode. And again, that's where an SBC you can leverage an SBC. So again, very similar to remote phones, the SIP trunking kind of sits alongside your PBX. And in this case, all the voice over IP calls come straight to the SBC, where it can apply all of those same security policies, but specific for SIP trunking are things like SIP peering and SIP count authentication, right? Where I can I can look at the peers, the carrier, and I can make sure that I'm authenticating with them, and it's only coming from them, and it's coming from their IP and their URI, and I'm not just looking at IP addresses because I want to look at their SIP message. I want to look at their SIP addressing. I want to make sure that they got the right, the right headers in the right spot, things like that, before I send it to the PBX. Because again, we want to make sure our PBX is deemed mission critical. So if there is other malicious traffic, it's not getting there. We set up our PBX, right, that peers only with this SBC. So it's an implicit trust that, hey, we're going to make sure that we're not going to accept any other SIP other than from the SBC. And of course, the PBX will provide all the other local routing to all of the different phones and remote phones, things like that. Setup, all right. Again, like I was saying, the configuration on the PBX switch box, right? Configure the SBC is the only peering provider for trunking, right? It's the only thing that we're going to take to and calls from, and everybody else can go. We'll let the SBC take the brunt of the security requirements. But this also says that if I only restrict it to only the SBC, that means that nothing else is going to be allowed to come into the box. On the SBC, it's very much the same as remote phones, right? I create profiles, trusted, untrusted, right? To say that certain security policies are different on both sides, making sure that I'm providing call routing to shape those trunk calls going in and out, providing ACLs, SIP security, IDS, IPS. Just a real quick note on, the SBC family. Okay, we come in small, medium, large, and virtual. So you can get them, in this particular case, with working with system in the virtual environment, we would offer our software only to be installed in their network infrastructure, in their hosted solution, where you can have a call capacity from 25 to 1,000 call sessions, right? It's software only, but since it's in their virtual infrastructure, it can be easily changed from 25 calls to 1,000 calls quite easily between, simply upping your cores, upping your memory, and away you go. But just in case, I wanted to make sure you're aware that there are small, medium, and the small SMB, SBC, the enterprise, and the net border in the various different appliances. I think, trying to compare Sangoma SBCs with others, their SBC, every communications vendor out there has their own SBC, or their independent SBC vendors out there. Some of the highlights or differences between our SBC and others is I think you'll find that our SBC is very easy to configure. SBCs in general, if you take a step back and say, geez, SBCs are kind of complicated. Well, I always say, yeah, they're kind of complicated because security is kind of complicated. Because if security was easy, wouldn't be much of security because there's a lot to understanding how malicious activity occurs. But once you kind of understand what you're trying to protect and how you protect it, then I think you'll find that the web GUI on the SBC is actually quite easy to understand. A lot of just, drop downs and editable fields. It's all web-based. There's no command line interfaces. You don't have, flat files and all these little parameters you need to understand. So as everything on the SBC is configured on the web, it is super easy to understand. It's kind of top down too. When you get into the GUI, you start at the top, you start working your way down, and you start drop downs and clicks and adding in various different features and functionality as you go. The licensing is super simple. It's just one license, and it's the call capacity of the SBC. All features are included. Then you just simply license the number of concurrent calls. Security is all built in. Denial of service or distributed denial of service attack prevention is built in. It has an advanced firewall for signaling and data. It has advanced call routing. So I can go really super advanced. I can do some really cool stuff with HTTP, which I talk about in the next slide, dynamic call routing. I can do XML dial plans, things like that. And of course, because you already use it like your firewall, it's kind of a single point exit and entry point into your network environment. It's a great place to do troubleshooting, right? Because all your calls are going through there. So, hey, let's just go in. I got a problem call with a remote phone. Just go into the SBC, take some packet captures, and look at the signaling and see how the media path is going, how good the quality is and such. Another highlight, like I kind of dropped in on, was HTTP dynamic call routing. It's a very powerful thing where I can reach out to using like a curl lookup to a web service and do a search on a particular attribute, a particular attribute or parameter, get a response back, and then make a decision based on that response. So I can integrate my SBC with your business logic, right? To say, okay, if this guy calls, if I see this phone number, send it over there, this kind of thing, right? Or send it to PBXA. Okay, no problem. I can do a lookup to an external database using a web curl. It's built in, there's no additional licensing for HA. So essentially, it comes fully licensed for an HA environment. So if you wanted to do a kind of an active passive sort of or active standby 2-box redundancy system, that's available to you even with deploying in the system environment. You could do load balancing. So this is simply to say that I can have one trunk coming in, balance them across several providers, or vice versa, have many PBXs coming in through the box and distribute them to one provider. So I have this kind of ability to route one call to multiple destinations. I can fail over one destination is congested or out, or I can fail over to other services, right? So it's a great environment for more than one switch box, also a great environment for more than one trunk provider. So specifically SBCs with system, right? SBCs, like I said, it's software installed within systems infrastructure, right? As a service. So it's SBC as a service. It's enabling you and your host, right? Host your SBC and with enabling voice over IP security to your to your PBX applications, where you can make a simple create, launch, and support your SBC, flexible scaling, right? With the easy licensing, they'll spin up an SBC and that instantly enables voice over IP security and routing and failover and all of those great media transcoding and all that. All those features of the SBC in their network infrastructure. Just a quick note, right? SBCs, like I said, it can be a little bit technical. So technical training and documentation are important. I would welcome everybody to go to Sangoma University, trainingsangoma.com, where there are free online SBC training videos. Okay, so you'll have to have a login for that through our portal, our partner portal, or our portals, but you can easily get access to, I think there's 10 or so videos. You can get certification and even work your way to industry badges that we also provide. Documentation, we have a lot of documentation out there, right? Sangoma.com for sales and marketing material, wikisangoma.com or wikisangoma.com for technical documentation, configuration guides, things like that, to help you set up your SBC. And then, of course, we also support and professional services. So professional services will allow, if it's a little too much for you, not a problem. Have the experts, have the most knowledgeable people work with you to configure the product for you, where we can provide remote configuration, remote installation of your SBC. And of course, support, right, for annual maintenance plans, and so that you can ensure that your software is up to date, and that if you have any sort of problems or need for assistance, that you have access to our support. Come in 2 different flavors, gold and platinum. And the gold, essentially, I break it right down, 9x5, 30 support credits, which is essentially like a la carte professional service, but at least 30 credits of configuration assistance, things like that. But we'll go in there as all the gold level. It's of course SLA based responsive and resolution goals, and we'll provide you insurance that if you do stumble into a problem, that you have access to somebody who can help you. And of course, platinum level, which is our 24/7 emergency support, and comes with a little bit more support credits to help you out in any sort of configuration. And now I'll turn it over to Brian, who can talk a little bit about partnering.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that information with us, Scott. But yes, so partnering with Sangoma, and I'll be following up with each of you to do a one-on-one and make sure that all of your questions are addressed for you specifically. But Sangoma's partner program really is exceptional at the margins you can make and how the channel is protected. Me being with VoIP Supply for 13 years, I can honestly say there is no better brand to grow with that actually has your back with map pricing and really a defined channel. So exceptional margins, complete solutions, everything from SIP trunks all the way through to your headset. Sangoma has a complete solution. There is a portal where you can find all the trainings that Scott did mention, and you can track all of your deployments. And there's multiple levels too, right? So as you grow, your discounts will grow with you, and I would be happy to have a one-on-one with all of you and tell you about that. Also, you do get reminder that you do get MRR on every system instance that you do fire up. So get with me. I would love to tell you what you would earn on your system installs as well. Mike, Scott, do you have anything else? Mike and Mike, I guess, does anybody have anything else they would like to add in here?
So I encourage anyone that's interested, if you have not seen the SBC, or really if you wanted to experience any of this Sangoma software, just contact VoIP Supply and request a 30-day trial. Brian or anyone from his team will give you a promo code and get you set up. And there's the ability to do it where you can have a dedicated trial, or you can leverage one of the VoIP Supply sandbox accounts, which is really easy to set up. So I encourage you guys, if you're interested in learning more and really experiencing it directly, just follow up with VoIP Supply and they'll get you set up.
My contact information is up on the screen along with my ugly mug. So if you want to give me a call, shoot me an email, text my cell, whatever's convenient for you is totally cool with me. And I'm happy to help and work with all of you. Thanks so much, everyone. Everyone have a great day.